Grandfather lived in the cabin that his grandfather had built on land that had been where the family had lived for generations. He enjoyed the weekends his grandson would visit. He liked knowing that his grandson enjoyed the old ways, hunting, carving, gathering food and medicine. He enjoyed the evenings on the porch, listening to the mountain move to the evening sounds, and he would share stories of his people to his grandson. And his grandson tugged at his grandfather's shirt. "Grandfather, tell me a story. I want to hear the first story you heard." The grandfather sat down next to his grandson and said, "Listen well, grandson. My grandfather shared this with me, so I will share it with you." The grandson smiled back as he sat back in his chair. It was the early days when creatures were teaching us to be human. High above the forest, and it was just a forest of so many forests, a raven was gliding, seeing and taking in the hills and so many trees, and on those trees so many branches, and as it was the right time of year, so many pine cones. And the raven began to glide to one of those branches where a pine cone dropped off as he landed. And the raven watched the pine cone bounce off other branches as it made its way to the ground. And he watched where there were other cones that also let go after being hit. And they landed on the ground and joined the other pine cones that surrounded the pine tree amongst the fallen and now red needles and dirt and roots. The raven tilted its head, curious that pine cones fall. And he thought, they are like stories. They let go of where they were and take their stories with them to where they are now. And the raven took off in flight again, soaring above the forest. And it was just another forest of so many, with so many branches and so many pine cones. Above the forest, there were more ravens flying from branch to branch, and cones letting go of where they were and taking their stories with them to where they are now. And the forest floor was covered with red needles and pine cones. The grandfather and grandson sat in silence while a raven flew by them and then landed on a pine tree in the yard.